Ben online. And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, minus the minor frustrations I was suffering through while playing CFB 26. But I'm doing great. I feel great that the game is back out after I have referenced it coming out for the past month. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, you messed up. You went into Road to Glory. You messed up already.
Twice. I did it twice. I did a quarterback and a running back. Both times did not end up as a starter at either school I was recruited to because I kept screwing up the in-game goals.
You got to go and retry them if you miss them. That's the thing. So in case anybody missed, EA Sports College Football 26 did come out today. Ben Ruffino was the number one recruit in the country. Just throwing that out there.
Not surprising.
You got to read. You got to actually read. You can't be clicking buttons. You got to read what's going on.
I'm too impatient for that. I didn't have that much time to play earlier, so I was kind of skipping through it.
I had 45 minutes, and in those 45 minutes, I just played Road to Glory and got done. It did come down to, if anyone's wondering, the three schools that liked me the most: Notre Dame, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Because listen, we're at the end of the day, I might give you a lot of shit. We're still Catholic. I still love my empire.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Catholicism.
Touchdown Jesus. Well, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there. Shane Gillis was on our recruiting visit. You know, I heard that Marcus Freeman's only getting these big time recruits because he's handsome. That's what people are saying to me.
I did see that. People were talking about that was Pate posted that. Hey, I mean, if that was the truth, I would believe it.
I mean, listen.
I'd commit for that reason.
Megan Ruffino would want to talk to Marcus Freeman. I mean, it's just the truth. Secondly, Ohio State University.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, get a chance to throw to Jeremiah Smith. Who wouldn't love that? Yeah. Which, by the way, I thought it was crazy. Spoiler alert for those who haven't played. When you're in high school, it simulates the 2025 season. So
yes, that's a very random
very
part.
weird.
Like you missed that. Yeah.
You missed the whole situation. And then it came down to the most beautiful school in the country, LSU, which we
Is that where you picked? That's where you picked?
I mean, come on.
That's not fun. Just picking the school that you root for.
I can't come in here. I can't come on any show and say, hey, guys, Ben Ruffino committed to the University of Notre Dame.
That's true. You would get crucified.
I would get crucified.
Told anybody that. Yeah.
But
we were on the depth chart. We're in the depth chart.
We were actually, believe it or not, we were third on the depth chart, but we instantly got a quarterback battle in the very beginning. By the way, in the portal, Eli Holstein goes in the portal and commits to LSU. So I had to fight Eli Holstein.
Competing with. Okay.
Yeah. I actually already beat Eli Holstein. So we are second on the depth chart. We're going up against Clemson in week 1.
Well, that's interesting. I think that here's my big issue with Road to Glory. I feel like, forget me messing up the goal thing and realizing you couldn't retry it if you failed it. I've noticed that the whole coaching trust mechanism is it's not bugged, but it's quite difficult. I went to Delaware.
You can't get over 850, by the way. I've noticed.
What do you mean you can't get over 850?
Even if you go off, even if you go stupid, you can't get over 850 per week in a game. It caps itself.
Well, I'm not even playing. Oh, you're talking about it during recruiting or once you're in?
No, once you get in college, it caps itself.
I haven't even been able to play any of the games. So I've been third on the depth chart, the two schools that I went to. But as I'm progressing, the most that you can get from practice is 300. And if the guy who's number one on the depth chart is playing okay, they're rapidly picking up steam. They're separating from you. So there's a chance, and this is why I was annoyed with it. I took an hour during what is usually my lunch break. I usually work throughout mostly the whole day. And I played her in this hour, and I realized this. I'm like, I'm chasing my tail. Like that's the thing that's bugging the crap out of me is if you go somewhere and you're not the immediate starter, you don't play your freshman season. You just sit, which is stupid. That's not fun. That's not. That's too realistic.
I mean, we will be probably week 2, week 3, and we're competing to be the starter. But did you use the 50 tokens or however much in the beginning to?
I did, and it didn't affect where I was on the depth chart. It made my player better. It just didn't affect where I was.
87 overall for whatever that's worth.
What archetype did you use?
Scrambling quarterback, because we run.
Did you do dual threat or pure runner?
Dual threat.
Okay. I did pure runner. That's interesting. I don't know. Separate from my issues, though, I do think that the game is a lot smoother. Just from like initial an hour of playing, initially noticing, it feels a lot smoother. It feels like it is a lot more refined, and it's a nice touch. The marching band is not the same song over and over again, and it's actual like all the marching band songs, and there's some popular songs that are the marching band version. Yeah,
right above it with LSU is in there, which is a big staple. And by the way, first play, inverted veer from Ben Ruffino. I ran into the back of a lineman, and we pushed the pile for 4 yards.
Really?
Yes.
How big is Ben Ruffino?
6'4", 245.
That's how big I made my guy. Yeah, you got a big body. You can make him fast as shit. There's no cap depending on how size you make him. That's the way to do it.
It's the way to do it. You can't bring the man down. But I haven't played it much. Like you said, I think the lunch break is when we spent the time in it, but it was fun while it was. But let's get into reality here. Joe, as Joe Castiglione, the AD of Oklahoma, is announced that he will be retiring. We're going to take a little bit of a different avenue here, but a big-time AD, a really good AD who saw that Oklahoma find themselves in the situation of pushing themselves into the SEC, has announced his retirement. But, Joe, the first thing that came out when Castiglione announced his retirement was, what does that mean for Brent Venables? I guess your thoughts on Castiglione retiring, and then what do you think this ultimately means for Oklahoma?
Well, first of all, Castiglione's been a great athletic director, ambassador of the program, and he's done some great things. And the biggest thing that you just mentioned there was opening the door, not opening the door because Texas was a part of it, but being a part of the transition to the SEC. I'd be curious who they go to hire, but as you just let in there, what does this mean for Brent Venables? He has been talked about as one of the coaches that if they don't perform well and they don't show a sign of improvement, what is that sign of improvement? 8 wins, 9 wins. How will he be sitting at the end of the year? I think that this now creates a potentially hotter seat than what it would have been at the end of this season. Castiglione hired him, having the AD who hired you, and as long as you have a good relationship, that keeps you alive for longer. That's why he got an extension. He got an extension because Castiglione clearly liked Venables.
What was his hire? He was supposed to.
Right. You're going to do, if you're an athletic director, we see this in the history of the sport, you're going to give the guy that you hired as many chances as possible and as much resources as possible to prove that you were making the right decision. You need to prove to the administration that you know how to hire and the guy that you hired knows how to coach. So depending on who they go with, unless they promote within, this could be problematic for Venables if they don't do that well this year.
I'm going to take the opposite approach. The opposite approach to this would be, well, Joe, when are they going to hire an AD? And he said at the end of the season. He said at the end of the year that he would step down, which means are they going to hire somebody in waiting? Like, what is Oklahoma going to do here? I don't know if it doesn't buy him another year. He says he's retiring at the end of the year. So unless he retires and the next day an AD is hired, I don't know if the first overall move at the end of the year come December is fire Brent Venables. I don't know a world where Castiglione steps down, okay, and retires, and then a guy gets hired, let's just hypothetically, because he said at the end of the year, let's say he retires on December the 31st for whatever that's worth, or December 30th, whatever day it is. How can you hire an AD? Number one, you got to find somebody. That's number one. They haven't even made a hire then. Then you get, let's just say for argument's sake, they actually do and are productive and hire someone on December the 30th. You mean to tell me that the first move within weeks, because it's got to be within a week, you can't sit there and not fire Brent Venables the day that you're bringing in there, and then you fire the man. I don't know if I see a world where this doesn't buy him a year regardless of what happens, unless the outright wheels fall off. The training wheels on the bicycle, the wheels on the bicycle, the handlebars, the seat, everything's got to come off here for I feel like for him to be fired. Because again, it's Joe, if he would have said, I'm retiring and I'm moving on, let's just say August, I could have said, well, hey, who knows? Maybe a president gets involved and fires the man. Again, I don't know. I just don't know if I can see a world where they move on from him, because I can't see an acting AD, a first time or an AD coming into a situation in his first move within a week, hypothetically, considering how most AD's hires are made. And Oklahoma, for what it's worth, may have all of this settled behind closed doors and we don't know it. But on the surface, there's just no way that I see that he gets let go here. None.
So I think that's obviously a good point, that the timeline here, it's unlikely to see an athletic director immediately get hired and just is, we're kicking you to the curb, you're out, we're getting rid of you. I think that where that timeline would come into play, though, a new hire is going to want to have his chance to bring in his own guy at some point. So the leash might not be completely cut off at the end of this season if Venables doesn't do well. But I would argue for the 2026 college football season, the leash would be abnormally short. So say that, the season's mediocre this year. It doesn't go well. They win 7 games again. An 8-win season, or maybe missing the college football playoff in the first year of the new AD, might lead to the firing then. But I don't know what the intention is here with Venables. We talked about in the preview that we think that they could be competitive and good this year. You're right. The dynamics of that are very complicated.
Which they attacked us for, by the way.
Which I'm shocked that they were upset with it.
And what they were upset about, the fan base. Oh, our offensive line, they can get better. Brother, so can every defensive line in the country.
Yeah, I don't like the argument we could get better. Oklahoma State's offensive line returned all of its starting offensive linemen last year.
It got worse.
It got worse. And I pointed that out in the preview last year. But
so
here's one. I looked up 2 names to know, 2 candidates to know possibly for this. And one of the ones that's brought up in this article on SI, Marcus Bowman, who is on Oklahoma's staff. So one of the names is being brought up, who is the deputy athletics director for business development and revenue generation. If they try to go more in a business direction with the hire and stick with somebody internal, and they do go with Bowman, maybe that would still leave the window open for what I'm talking about here of a potential immediate firing.
All right, let's get there. If you're correct, and let's say they do go that direction, then Venables can be in trouble.
Okay.
Right? If you're hiring someone that's already there, yes, he can be in trouble. Joe, if they don't go there and they go from an outside source, no, they're not. No. I don't see an avenue where you can let the man go. Again, he's got to hypothetically go 6-6 this year. But here's the problem with that. What is Oklahoma's goal of what they're trying to do here? In the Big Ten, if you're not going 10-2, it's a bad season. In the SEC, they don't want to relinquish this, but they're going to have to. Is 8-4 a good season for them? I know that they think that they're going to be better. And hell, John Mateer could lead them to 9-3, 10-2 for all we know at the current moment. For all we know, this kid could be very special. The bottom line remains, if he does not, and they do not, take that next step, if they don't get to 8-9 wins, he's in trouble. We're coming out here from a year from now saying, hey, no, I mean, they got to play Texas again. They got to play Bama. It doesn't change. Joe, they got to play Georgia. They got to play Texas. They got to play LSU. Like, it's not going to slow down. Like, the Big Ten and the SEC does not slow down for you. It's not going to. By the way, you're not recruiting at a level to keep the man. Like, you just come to a point where, Joe, if they do hire from within, this could be trouble. Castiglione, for what it's worth, I thought was a good AD. I also think he's getting out before real shit hits the fan.
It's a fair point to bring up that, like, as it kind of looks like things could be tumultuous for the next couple of years. Yeah, going out after a successful transition to the SEC and not going well, it's the next guy's responsibility to figure it out. We haven't talked about the recruiting stuff, by the way, and I don't intend to us to really dig into it, but I've talked to a couple people that have been shocked by how bad their recruiting has been, and I don't know if there is going to be some spark that happens around signing day and they just suddenly bring in a lot of big names, or maybe they decide they want to be a transfer portal team. And that's why they brought in Nagy.
They just got the big tight end, Tyler Ruxer, the 4-star. But I mean, even then, Joe,
they have not been. All I had else was that they have not been recruiting to the typical Oklahoma standard that we're used to saying.
Joe, 2.5, 3 years ago, I went in Oklahoma Spaces, Twitter Spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And, brother, they were throwing all kinds of shade. When we started Ruffino and Joe Show, they were throwing all kinds of shade at me because I said their thought was, when we put on the SEC patch, we're going to get some of these kids that we weren't getting in the past. The problem has always been in that, then who are you taking them from? Because to say that you're going to get better recruits means that you're taking them from somebody. Are you going to take them from Bama, Texas, Georgia, LSU, A&M? You're not. You're not. So, again, Venables, for me at the current moment, is, I don't want to say he's in hot water, but, man, that ice is starting to crack.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be admitted.
He's had 2 6-win seasons in 3 years. I got to ask God's honest question. In the last 3 years, Mike Norvell had an outright collapse. But if this were anybody else at a big institution, we would be calling for that. I mean, people would be calling for that guy's head.
The reaction to it has been odd. I do think that he gets the benefit of the doubt. And the reason why he signed, he signed the extension right before he came in, and we talked about this. Clearly, his agent wanted to negotiate an extension, knowing that there was going to be a hard, difficult start to the time in the SEC because they were given a really difficult schedule. So that's where the benefit of the doubt comes into play, that this is uncharted waters in a difficult territory. But to what you're talking about, there was this thought that they were going to step in the SEC and the recruiting was going to completely pop off, and it's been fine. There's not there hasn't been an uptick. Texas has had an uptick. Texas has taken full advantage of this, and the guys that you're competing with, that this argument that you were suddenly going to recruit better, you are competing with mostly Texas, that area, that region, that part of the country. You were recruiting against them in that central part of the United States. Like you just said, it's very unlikely that you're going to take guys from other southern territories where they're recruited by the big schools in college football. It just wasn't going to happen. So you thought something was going to change, but the same dynamic is still there. You're competing with Texas. It's still there. It hasn't changed.
No.
They're kicking your ass right now.
Well, and it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
Joe, things have started to separate. Again, that SEC patch don't mean shit. The SEC patch is even when everybody's got the SEC patch that you're going up against.
Right. Right.
They never understood that.
They're going to go in the Midwest in Southern California.
They kicked me out of these things because I said, okay, are you taking the kid from Georgia, Bama, or Texas, or LSU? Well, they said LSU. They haven't come inside the state of Louisiana and taken a kid. Not that LSU wanted. They haven't. They didn't. A&M spending a shitload of money. Look, the first thing that I thought right, wrong, or indifferent when I saw that Castiglione was leaving. Oh, my man's just going out on his own terms, and good on him. I would want to go out on my own terms too. It's not a shot. Yeah. Cody McGee with a $10 super chat says, Blake and Joe, if you were an offense or defensive coordinator in college, would it be better to call plays on the field or in the press box? Joe, I want to be on the field.
I would want to be in the box. I want to be able to see everything.
I want everybody to be able to see me.
What? Well, wait. Is
joking? I don't think that I could get well, here's the thing. It doesn't really matter, right? Like I don't think it really matters because listen, if a coach in the box, everybody is going to tell you in the box that, hey man, hey coach, they're going cover 2 here. They've been playing quarters. All right, well, we're attacking quarters. I asked Mike Denbrock this, ironically, Joe, because he was on the field with Marcus Freeman, if you remember when they were at Cincinnati. Both of them were on the field. It's the first time I remember like a playoff team having both coordinators on the field. I literally asked Mike in a press conference, what do you want most? He goes, I could give a shit. He goes, it just depends on the coaching staff, really. He goes, brother, BK's on. This was his answer. Brian Kelly's on the field. Why do I need to be there? Now, I think it was different for when he's at Cincinnati and when he is at Notre Dame because he's got 2 defensive-minded head coaches, right? Like right. It's a different. You don't make that determination based off of your preference. You make that determination based off the staff. Let's call it what it is. Did Marcus, and I'm asking, did Marcus really tell Denbrock what he needed to be doing? No. It's a different – you are the head coach of that specific situation. Marcus does everything. I'm not trying to say he doesn't, but it doesn't really bother me. In all honesty, it wouldn't bother me. Like either one would smile with me.
Separate from that, if I were to answer this question just based on what I think the preference would be, I would want to be in the box. I think that getting to see the full field and seeing as things are unfolding, seeing what's open, I don't know. I think that would be a lot more beneficial to be.
I need to be on TV, Joe.
You'd be in TV more in the box than you would be on the field. They got a camera in the box, man.
I'm joking, dude.
You got your own special camera.
Do you think I would go full Tommy Reese at Alabama slamming the phone?
I think so. I think you would.
Who was the other one that got called out? That it wasn't Garrett. Who was the former Texas Tech quarterback? It was the USC OC.
Kingsbury?
No, it was I forget his name. It'll come to me. But he was at USC with I think either with or right before Lincoln. He was losing his mind. I'm like, you ain't calling plays anyway. Lincoln's calling plays. Speaking of Lincoln, we're going to talk about USC next. We're going to do a deep dive with him. Garrett Hartley? No. It's going to come to me.
Yeah, I don't know who you're going for. Cliff Kingsbury was at USC though for like a week.
Yeah, I know. Then Washington drafted Jaden Daniels. He goes,
no.
See ya.
No. That was when he took the Cardinals job.
No, he was just remember he got hired back at USC like 2 years ago. Remember?
He went
right.
He got hired as the OC and then he went back as an analyst and then got hired by the Commanders. That was what happened.
Old Cliff doing Cliff level things. All right. When we come back, we'll break down USC. We'll do a deep dive on them. We'll stay in the Big Ten. We'll do an Iowa deep. Continue on our deep dives here. We go to the great city of Los Angeles, the great state of California. I know that you don't really like the Trojans so much, being a Notre Dame man.
Well, I also didn't enjoy living in Los Angeles either, so I wouldn't call it a great city, but continue.
So City of Angels, man. But regardless, USC, we go to Los Angeles to continue on our deep dives here. Joe, not the season I think that the Trojans were looking for last year, but I got to give them this. I know that we were on them and we talked about them a lot a season ago, but there were a lot of positives I think that you could have taken away from last season. Now going into the second year in the Big Ten for USC, how do you see this 2025 season with Lincoln playing out in the Big Ten?
So, like, the whole dynamic with their success last year and then now what to expect from them coming into this year, I was not high on USC at the beginning of last season at all. I was a little cautious after they played against LSU in the way that they did when they won, but it didn't feel right. I kind of just ate it because USC fans were taking a victory lap, and I will always admit when at the time I am wrong. I will not double down on those situations. But I felt like last year, the end result was exactly what we thought was going to happen at the beginning of the year, where they got out physical. They didn't really have the defensive line to go toe-to-toe with teams like Minnesota, of all teams, that they couldn't beat.
Yeah.
They didn't have the quarterback play. I didn't think that Miller Moss was as good as everyone was hyping up to be, and he started to slow down and really make mistakes as the season went on. And I think with last year coming into this year, nationally, the expectations are incredibly low. But I feel like we should actually have higher expectations and we should have higher hopes, and that this will be a much better year than last year. I wouldn't be shocked, Blake, if we're not talking about USC as one of the Big Ten teams that's knocking on the door to the playoff at the end of the year. Now, there's a bunch of
agree. I agree.
There's a bunch of variables that we're going to work through here in a second, but I look at their defensive core. They have a really underrated defensive line, and they have one of the best safeties in the country that nobody's talking about in Kamari Ramsey, who I am all in on. He's going to be a first-round pick. He is a phenomenal safety to me. They have a defense that they have not had under Lincoln Riley, and I think that is the driving force for them to shock a lot of people.
I'll get to defense in a moment, but they certainly got better last year than any level of form of when Lincoln had Alex Grinch with him. I don't think that they played harder. They weren't making the plays necessarily, but you could tell, like the Penn State game. Joe, to be honest with you, the Michigan game, like even in a loss, in both of those being losses, for the first time maybe in the last couple of years defensively, I saw max effort. And Joe, I will back a team for whatever it's worth. So what? They're not making the play. At least I know they're bought in. They're bought in on Lynn. They're bought in on everything that's going on there. They just weren't making the plays. Now, offensively, Joe, that's where I actually look at them and say, yeah, they might not be bad. Now, the quarterback situation with Jaden, the quarterback situation, what happens there, I don't know. Does Longstreet find a way into that starting lineup? I don't know. We're just going to act as if, look, that Lincoln had one bad quarterback, and I say bad. I don't think Miller Moss was bad necessarily. I think he's a first-time starting quarterback.
He wasn't good.
I didn't say he was good. I don't think he was bad. I think there were other things that were going on. For example, I went back today and looked at that Michigan game. In 37 dropbacks, he got hit 20 of them. 20. Like, there were certain situations that I don't think that necessarily a first-time starting quarterback was given grace on. There was so much pressure on USC because of what happened the year before with Caleb Williams and losing, that a lot was put on the kid's shoulders. Regardless of that, Joe, their wide receiver core is really underrated. You bring back Mekhi Lemon. You bring back Jacoby Lane, which, by the way, Jacoby Lane had 12 receiving touchdowns a season ago. 12. Like, they did some really good things down the stretch. You bring back a tight end who, again, in Lake McCree, I don't think gets the pub that he deserves. This dude will be on the end line of scrimmage. I think he's a really good blocker. He did some really good things in the 24 catches that he had, but they're also bringing in some other pieces offensively that I got to be honest with you, I think were hits under the radar. Let me give an example. You bring in Wayman Jordan. Did you see this Wayman Jordan film? The Hutchinson Community College running back? Holy shit. I mean, like, I don't know if this is going to translate from community college or JUCO to the Big Ten. I don't know. This kid's electric. Like, this kid can play. Like, there was who was the safety that was a community college committed to Miami? I forget his name. but he's like burning him to the outside. It's not as if, like, when you look at JUCO, it's not as if he's going up against all scrubs. A lot of these kids getting recruited, going to JUCO, then going somewhere else. They did get some underrated pieces. Can Lincoln figure this shit out? Now, physically up front, Joe, they got pushed around in the Big Ten a year ago. That's where I worry about with them. But offensively, I don't know if they don't have some really damn good pieces that they can build off of.
And I'd also add in there Eli Sanders, who they brought in from New Mexico. He was 5th in the country last year in yards per carry with 7.2. So this is a lot of juice, despite them losing Quentin Joyner and Woody Marks, who left in the draft, and Quentin Joyner went to Texas Tech. I think the big conversation point for them offensively, it does revolve aggressively around Jaden Maeba, who was really productive at UNLV. He comes into USC, not really talked about because Miller Moss was starting, and then he finishes strong 3-1. But you got to go back and watch the tape on those final games because there was so much chaos, a lot of mistakes, a lot of really, really bad throws. If there's a coach that is going to get him right, it is going to be Lincoln Riley.
Mm-hmm.
But Maeva has to play better in order for this team to reach the accomplishments that we're projecting here. It helps a lot that you're bringing back key offensive linemen like Elijah Page, and you just mentioned Lane and Lemon, who are two of the better receivers in the country, could potentially be first-round picks in the upcoming draft. You have the weapons for Maeva to turn to and to rely on, but you got to reel them in. You got to reel in the chaos. If that happens, this team does end up winning 9 football games. But if Maeva turns the ball over as much as he did against Notre Dame and Texas A&M and all those spots, this team could go through another bumpy season. That was what I felt like, and this is where you and I disagree. I felt like they left a lot on the bone because they didn't have a quarterback who was physically gifted. I said this, and I got so much pushback from USC fans that I said that Miller Moss was the worst quarterback that Lincoln Riley has ever had. And that's true. I'm not saying that he's a shit quarterback and he's bad. He could do some good things at Louisville this year.
He had 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick before Miller Moss.
Right, and all of those guys, Kyler Murray, elite small athlete, Caleb Williams, elite athlete. Baker Mayfield wasn't as good of an athlete, but had
Jalen Hurts,
a very aggressive arm. Jalen Hurts, elite athlete. Maeva is back into those molds of these athletic guys that he's tapped into. So I have hopes that Maeva can play better, but everything I'm just if you had asked me what will cause this thing to fall apart again, it's going to be the performance of Jaden Maeva.
I don't disagree with that. There were a lot. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying I'm not going to overreact to a bad year at quarterback when this dude's had some special seasons there. Like, if we're just being blunt, before Kyler Murray, okay, let's look at the 2 quarterbacks that he did bring in. Baker Mayfield was a walk-on. He was a walk-on. So it's not as if that, hey, this kid just, Baker Mayfield was a former 5-star kid that came in there and started running shit. Jalen Hurts got benched. Hurts was a lot more experienced and a lot more talented before going in there. But he also got benched. And a lot of people didn't know how he was going to react to that. I'm just not going to overreact yet to bad quarterback play. Now, to your point, what happens when you don't have first overall pick talent? What happens when you don't have a guy that's led the Eagles to 2 Super Bowl runs and won one of them? I do think that your point is valid here. The point that I would make here to some extent that I want to throw out, and it's not even on Jaden Maeva's shoulders necessarily. Joe, down the stretch, they got absolutely torched in their secondary. They were playing in some massive shootout type situations. Joe, their secondary a year ago was 98th in the country in passing yards allowed. They got better under Alex Grinch. One area that they did not get better in, they did statistically, but not by much. Joe, they got absolutely hammered through the air in a conference who, by the way, does not throw the ball like that. They got pumped. I'm not trying to be rude, But look at the Big Ten and look at the passing statistics in reference to passing attempts versus the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, of the Power Four conferences. The teams in the Big Ten throw the ball from a attempt level the least. They got punked in the secondary. I think that they'll be better there. I do think that there's a lot on the shoulders that they got in these shootouts in situations where I'm like, look, man, you're asking a kid for a first time in the Big Ten to lead you to something when your defense can't make stops. They got to be better defensively to help this offense. Joe, the biggest thing when we talk about these breakdowns, you know what I feel like USC has just not had? Complementary football. Complementary football. I brought up the part of Miller Moss getting hit 20 times and 37 dropbacks. 20 times? Like, you're not complimenting him. I think of the Notre Dame situation. Now, Maiava threw too many interceptions, threw the pick sixes, too many bad situations. Why was he put in those situations? Why is he put in those situations where he's got to go down in a 4-minute drive and score? I mean, I get that it was a lot of chaos, but Joe, when you look at them defensively a year ago, they were 77th in the country in total defense. They were 98th in passing yards allowed. I mean, it did get better, but not to the level of complimentary where you got to be a team that's going to win 9 games. I mean, I feel like because of Lincoln, we want to assume, and I understand, listen, I'm not trying to defend the kid. There were bad situations. I agree with you. But let's not act like that at the end of the day that they did not do some very bad things defensively too, because they did.
I slightly pushed back on the Maiava comment that you threw in there. A lot of his issues were self-inflicted.
Fair.
A lot of his mistakes were self-inflicted, but this is where the big step is taken is year 2 with your new defensive coordinator. And I've spoken extremely highly of D'Anton Lynn, and I've said a number of times.
He loves him, by the way.
But I really believe, I believe that, and I've said this so many times, that he is a top 5 defensive coordinator in the sport. For him to have that much of an improvement from year 1 or into year 1 after how bad they were under Alex Grinch was notable, but didn't get a lot of recognition. There is a chance now for Lynn here to continue to build this, and for all these defensive pieces that they're bringing back, for them to take a nice leap forward. I think it is totally plausible for them to be in that realm of 9 wins. Can I read off their schedule so we can kind of take a look?
Yes.
All right, they start with a new FBS team, CFB 26 favorite, Missouri State. They play Georgia Southern. They go to Purdue versus Michigan State, at Illinois, bye week. Wait, am I reading the right one? Yeah. Versus Michigan, at Notre Dame, bye week again, at Nebraska, versus Northwestern, versus Iowa, at Oregon, versus UCLA. I think that the clear losses for me on this, they don't travel well to Notre Dame. They typically just don't. They don't travel well to Indiana. And I don't think that they're beating Oregon at Oregon. That gives them a chance here if they can beat teams like Illinois, Nebraska, and beat Michigan at home.
Well, they got to go to Champaign. I mean, they got Michigan coming in. Listen, there are 8 wins on this schedule. Here's the thing. But they're talented enough to have 8 wins minimum. The question of what you're asking here is, can they upset Oregon? We don't think that. I don't think going to Nebraska actually benefits them. I mean, Joe, they're going to Notre Dame. They're flying home. Then they're going to Nebraska. Now, they do have a bye week in the middle of that, and I understand that. But in the month of, I say October, but in the 4-week stretch of games that they have, they are at Illinois, Michigan at home, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska. Joe, that's their crux of their season. Like, forget the Oregon, forget everything else in that schedule. Brother, you go on the road 3 out of 4 weeks. You got some bye weeks paired in there. You got the one after Illinois. You got the one after Notre Dame. So it does benefit you to some extent. But, Joe, that in and of itself, if they could upset Illinois and then get Michigan at home, God forbid they upset Michigan. I don't think you and I believe that they're going to beat Notre Dame and Oregon. But the Nebraska game for me on November the 1st is where I kind of sit here and I'm like, Joe, that place is goofy as hell. I just came back from Nebraska. That bitch is goofy as hell. They got strip clubs, McDonald's, Burger Kings, and a church is when I saw Lincoln, Nebraska. There ain't much to do in Lincoln. Shit gets weird. I'm telling you. I don't know. They do have some wins in here that I feel like that they're just going to beat. UCLA, Northwestern, Purdue. They can get to 8 wins. Joe, if that's their floor, you could be in a situation, stay with me, that they're 7-2 going into the Oregon week. And if they win, Joe, we got to have a conversation. Is Lincoln and them back in the playoff? They are talented enough to get there. But I got to say this. Joe, what's the overall crux? Defense travels. They did not get to the quarterback worth a damn last year at all. They got to find a way to do that, and if they can, maybe they can get to 9 wins. I don't think it's as bad as what it was a season ago for USC.
Yeah, my final thought with this, the big benefit with this upcoming schedule and some of the things that we're talking about we think are going to be better on this roster, their road games are Purdue, Illinois, Notre Dame, Nebraska, and Oregon. I see 2 truly difficult road situations and a good team that you have to play on the road in Illinois. This is 9-3 is completely accomplishable. And what's happening with that final, those final 2 weeks and whatever happens in that Oregon game could be a deciding factor for if they're knocking on the door of the playoff.
Really could be. It's going to be an interesting season. Can they rebuild? Look, can a guy like Jakeem Stewart, the 5-star, go in there and provide them some pass rush will be crux for them. They didn't have a guy over 4 sacks last year.
It's just unacceptable.
It's very unacceptable. So we'll see. All right. Joe, let's stay in the Big Ten, a team that actually does play USC in this upcoming schedule, a team that you and I normally disagree about at the highest level, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Joe, going into the 2025 season, when you look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, your thoughts going into the season. Now, I got to admit something. I don't do this often. I am going to give you the complete floor on what you think on Mike Gronowski because he is a South Dakota State guy.
Okay, I already got to correct you. Mark Gronowski.
See, I don't even know.
Mark Gronowski
you flipped your shit when he went to Iowa.
Hey, respect Mark Gronowski. Any college football fan needs to respect this. I can't even call him a young man. He's been playing football for 7 years.
Dude, he literally had his first snap in 2022.
It's insane how long he's been around. He's been on national championship competing teams, national championship winning teams. He won the FCS Heisman. I don't think that this transfer portal move got enough pub. And anyone who's going to just say that Iowa is a walkover knows nothing about this team and knows nothing about Gronowski. Mark Gronowski is the type of quarterback that will keep them in any game on their schedule, even ones where they are significantly outmatched, because he is a fantastic runner. He's a pretty good passer as well. 12,000 career total yards in his time as the Jackrabbits quarterback. This dude has been a game changer since his early days playing at South Dakota State. And this is going to be the biggest driving force for any success they have. Now, I'm not like super duper bullish on Iowa this year, like I blindly was last year.
Yeah, you
love them. They've been the epitome of consistency because we know that over the last 10 seasons, 9 of the last 10 seasons, they've won at least 8 games. They're going to be able to get to there. But Gronowski gives them juice. And this defense that they're bringing back, their O-line, they're bringing back a lot of veteran starters. They have a well-rounded, experienced roster that is enough for them to finish at the top of the standings.
Iowa got a lot of national recognition because of the simple fact that there were divisions in the Big Ten. And they won their division more times than not. It's not the same. The 9-3 that you're going in now, the 8-4 that you're going in now is not the same. Joe, here's the truth. It's Iowa. And I don't mean to like discredit them as a program. You got to get better offensively. Now, you're speaking high on their quarterback situation. I know in 23 he had a better situation. I would digress to you. I don't know if just South Dakota State was better offensively in 2023 versus 2024. I'm assuming they were. Statistically, he was better. I think he had less interceptions, more touchdowns. Last year he did run for 10 touchdowns, which, I mean, just screams being mobile. Joe, this is the Big Ten, okay? And when you take that massive of a leap in play, I know what he did in the FCS. I'm not trying to degrade what he did in the FCS. There also just comes a part where what do you do against some of these teams that are going to kill you, right? Like, I mean, like, are out for blood. I don't know if offensively that they, number one, have the weapons to benefit him, nor do I know or feel as if that, like, listen, I don't mean this in a wrong way. There comes a part for me that I got to see him do this in the Big Ten. Not saying he can't. Not saying it wasn't a great move, but Iowa offensively, quite honestly, has been a joke. And I think that the two things can be true at once. You are a solid program. You're a solid program because you build it the right way, and there's a floor for you of those 8 wins. Joe, is Vanderzee going to be their leading guy at wide receiver? I know that they bring back Jacob Gill, who was their leading wide receiver a year ago. Joe, but
411 yards, which is
35 catches. 35 catches. Like, in the new age of the Big Ten, that's not acceptable. It just isn't. Now, I know it's not the way that we do things. We run the football, play tough-nosed defense. Sounds good. You're replacing a big-time running back, and I know that Moulton had a good season a year ago. The bottom line is Joe, when it comes to Iowa, and I, again, don't mean this in a wrong way, I'm putting my hands up offensively. Listen, I mean, they're winning these games based off of being solid defensively, and when defensively you had to reload a season ago, it bit you in the ass. I mean, I hate to call it like that. Maybe Gronowski can do some better things, but Joe, I don't know if I see it because McNamara didn't have bad film sometimes. He also had no help. I mean, Joe, what was the game that we were talking about last year? It comes off the tip of my tongue. I forget. Maybe it was Indiana. I don't remember. But nobody open. No one. So this kid could be really good. I just don't know if he has the guys around him that can do anything special.
Okay, so where I sit with this, their offensive line, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be stout. They're going to have a fine time protecting. They've always had good linemen in Gennings, Dunker, Logan Jones. I'm not high on Dunker as a draft prospect, but like they're two of the better offensive linemen coming back in the Big Ten. So you've got that experience, you've got reliability. You're replacing Caleb Johnson, you're replacing Luke Lakey, who was your bigger name tight end that you had. I agree with what you're bringing up here. Like, are they suddenly going to have a weapon? They've historically, or not historically, but over the past few years, they have not had good receivers. They haven't. No. They haven't been able to move the ball through the air. But where I feel like things get a little bit more dynamic is that they've never, I don't know if I could say never, but like for the past 5 years, when was the last time that they had a truly athletic quarterback like Gronowski? They've had all these big, stiff statues like Nate Stanley dropping back. These guys that couldn't move, that were sitting ducks, that would stand in the pocket, nobody would get open, and they'd take a hit. And when they couldn't run the ball, they were cooked. I think that there is now a very unique layer that's added in. And I don't think that just because he's mobile that suddenly the receivers start to get open easier. I think that now that he's mobile, it creates a different threat that they just have not had under Ferentz.
Very fair.
Well, I implore Iowa fans to comment, like, when was the last athletic mobile quarterback that Ferentz has had? I can't think. I think of they're all the same.
The last athletic wide receiver that they've had that's overly athletic.
Well, right. Well, that's a given, and it's kind of plays with what we're saying here. But all the quarterbacks they've had have just been these big white dudes that can't move. They can't. They're not athletic.
White man can jump.
Gronowski can move, man. And I think that that's where they go. They're not going to be the usual Iowa team that we see where, like against Ohio State, they can't move the ball. And the game just is kind of just over, despite them playing pretty decent on defense in spurts, because they can't move the damn ball. It's like, okay, great. This is boring and this is disappointing. They're going to be able to extend drives and put points on the board easier than they have in the past. I don't know for certain what that degree is, and hopefully their receiver room is a little bit more explosive than it's been over the past 4 years.
Look, there were a lot of games like South Dakota. No, not South Dakota State, but just South Dakota, okay, where they had some situations where he ran. But here's the problem that I have, Joe, is last year, if you remember, you picked the upset for Oklahoma State to get beat by South Dakota State. Remember? You were joking. You were just making, whatever.
I was being quite certain about it, but
okay. Regardless, Joe, he tried to run on Oklahoma State and got absolutely stuffed with that defense. So I agree with what you're saying on the athleticism part. Joe, go back and watch that Oklahoma State game from a season ago. They did get beat 40-4. I think it was 44-17, 44-20, something like that. But he ran the ball for 10 yards for 10. He had 10 attempts for 17 yards. Like, they tried, and against a really bad FBS team defensively, they could not run the ball, like, at all. And quite honestly, if you go back and watch the first half, there are a couple times where he gets tracked down. So I get listen, hold on. Okay. I don't disagree that athletically he's the best that they have had. That doesn't mean that you can go in the Big Ten and run away from some of these guys if you can't run away from Oklahoma State.
I was just going to chime in and say that for a second I was going to make the excuse of like, well, he had an FCS team around him. The quality of offensive line that he had at South Dakota State last year and over the last couple of years, I mean, go back and look. They've put a number of guys out into the NFL, not to the same degree of success of Iowa, but they've been more successful at developing offensive linemen and running backs more than the back half of the P4. And the receiving room wasn't great, but it was probably on par with what Iowa had last year. So yeah, like I kind of actually will concede that point to you. I'm not saying South Dakota State's offense.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that South Dakota State's offense was exactly the same as Iowa's or better last year. That's not what I'm saying. There's a little bit more talent for Iowa, but but I just think that like that it could provide a little bit of an example. They have to be creative. They have to be better. Gronowski needs to rely on his experience. They can be a threat because of what Gronowski supplies. And then we didn't really get to defensively.
Let's get there.
They have a lot of really good defensive linemen that are coming in this year. Coming back this year. Aaron Graves is a really underrated defensive tackle. Max Llewellyn's an underrated defensive end. And Xavier Nwankpa was a former 5-star safety that decided to come back for another year instead of declaring for the draft. So they've got athletes, and we know that they're well coached.
Here's the thing for me defensively with them. Did you see the tweet I tagged you in?
Yes, I did.
10 seniors in the 2 deep, 9 of them starting. Joe, they don't have but three of the other starters that they have are redshirted juniors. You want to know how Phil Parker and company continue to roll out really successful defenses? Joe, some of them are already taking withdrawals from their 401k. They're so old. I heard their whole secondary they could call AARP. I mean, like, they are old, really. Them defensively, as we've said on this show for the last 3 years, I'm never going to worry about them. They reloaded a year ago. I think they're going to be really good again defensively. They just got so much damn experience, so much, and they play fundamentally sound. I'm never, when we talk about Iowa, Joe, you know why I don't talk about them defensively? Because, Joe, we come out here every year and talk about the same damn shit over and over and over again with them. I know that the fans, look, I know that it's coming to an end sooner rather than later, and maybe they can finally take a next step. Phil Parker's the best DC in the country based off the level of talent that he has and what he does with it. golly, they got a lot of experience. And brother, they got red-shirted juniors and red-shirted sophomores that are in the two deep too. They got guys everywhere that have been there in that system and have been building off of Phil Parker. I think defensively they could be a top 3 unit just based off of who they are. I mean, because every single year, I went back and looked at this. 2 years ago, Joe, of the 11 starters that they had, 9 were seniors. 3 years ago, when they led the Big Ten in defense, 10 were seniors. I mean, it's ridiculous. By the way, you had a first-round pick that didn't even start and was a junior, redshirted. Like, I mean, it's just what they do. I don't know how to come in here and explain that shit.
They are, I mean, like, again, we're not surprised.
No.
The fact that Parker's bringing back this much experience talent. And that's what always has made them reliable. Why we can always count on them to show up and to beat up on the middle to the back end of the Big Ten. I think that their schedule is pretty.
Yeah, let's go to their schedule.
Their schedule is pretty favorable because they don't play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan this upcoming year. Start with Albany. They go to Iowa State versus UMass, at Rutgers versus Indiana, bye week, at Wisconsin versus Penn State versus Minnesota, bye week, versus Oregon, at USC versus Michigan State, at Nebraska. I still think that this is probably an 8-4 team. Because I don't think that they're going to beat Indiana. I don't think that they're dynamic enough to beat Indiana. I don't think that they're beating Penn State, and I do not think that they're going to beat Oregon. And there's inevitably a trap somewhere that they're going to fall into.
I don't know if they can go beat USC or Nebraska on the road.
Yeah.
They're losing one of those games. Joe, this is 7-5, 8-4 team at best.
I think they're going to be 8-4. I think they're going to be 8-4.
By the way, I can't believe I'm going to say this. When the hell is Minnesota going to be? Because nowhere saw that defense coming out of nowhere last year.
Well, they just lost Heatherman.
That's true.
So there's a reset there. I'm not worried about Minnesota, but I think that to that point where like you get to the end of the season, here's the crazy thing. There's a shot that going into the final month, they could have 1 loss. And then they could go in a 1-3 skid in their last 4 games and completely take themselves out of it.
It's the most Iowa thing of all time. It's the most Joe, I literally just got from that area of the country. I just left it. I literally got out the airport in Nebraska on the Nebraska-Iowa line. Do you want me to tell you what I saw?
What?
Corn, Burger King, McDonald's, church, 3 miles down, strip club, corn.
Sounds like a good time.
By the way, the strip club had more people than the church did on that Sunday. Just throwing that out there.
Come on, man.
I'm dead honest. More people were at the strip club. The locals were were at the strip club than there was.
You're going to get us in trouble. You're going to get us in trouble.
Joe, I literally saw it with these 2 eyes.
Oh God, I don't know how to analyze that. I don't know.
Booty's more important.
8-4 though. I think Iowa's going to be 8-4.
I'm going 7-5. I think they're going to. I think the schedule's too brutal.
Hey, but I stick with the stat that I brought up earlier. Ferentz has been 9 of the last 10 seasons has won at least 8 games. So I'm going to stick to that. They're going to win a game that they're not supposed to, but they could lose a game that they're not supposed to. So 8-4.
Rutgers.
I'm not going to. Rutgers is going to be good this year.
All right. We'll see y'all again on Wednesday. Y'all have a great night. Peace.